Awakening Your Everyday Wisdom. This is an introduction of myself. My name is Neal-Dugdale, and I'm in Montana. And the way I'm organizing this introduction is I'll give you a little bit of a picture of my early childhood. And then from there, I'm going to go on two basic tracks. One will be my spiritual path, and the other will be my professional path. And hopefully between those two, you'll get enough information about me. So early childhood, wow, that was pretty messy. My parents split up when I was 4, and at the time my dad had been in the military and my mom had never worked, and then all of a sudden she was a single mom with 5 kids, and my dad didn't know how to keep it together. So we basically bounced around a lot. The first time I went to school 2 years in a row was my freshman and sophomore years in high school. Up to then, it was every year, different schools, sometimes 2 schools in 1 year. So you can imagine that I didn't feel real grounded. It was a very interesting childhood. The great part about it was we did live in the Keys for a long time. My dad had been stationed there, and that's when they got divorced, but I lived on 4 different keys in the Florida Keys. That was pretty cool. So, early childhood was like that. I didn't really get a solid education, didn't get a solid community, and we even bounced from church to church. We were Protestant, and my mom was seeking something that she just couldn't seem to find. And so we went from one church to another. So I didn't even have stability there. So that was early childhood. Then in high school, we moved again, small town. I'm trying desperately to fit in because that is a skill that I developed with all that moving. So I'm trying to make friends, and my mom had become one of 3 Baha'is in this small little town in the Bible Belt in Florida. There were 27 churches in this little town, no synagogue, no temple, and it was very segregated. There was definitely a black part of town and a white part of town. And here I am trying to figure out, where do I fit in? Kids were asking me to join their church group, and I wanted to, but my mom is a Baha'i, and I can remember just screaming in pain to my mom going, "Can't you just stay a Christian till I get out of high school?" Well, it was desperate. But that wasn't her path. I have come to respect her path. And with the Baha'i faith, there's some very beautiful principles of life. And what I really liked about it is open to all major religions in the world. So a Baha'i temple has 9 archways, openings into the temple, and that's to symbolize openness to the 9 major religions in the world. So I like that part, but I never became a Baha'i. Then, when I got out of school, I moved to the beach in Florida and was living the life. Yeah, teenagers living in an apartment on the beach. It was pretty cool. But I joined a light workers group. It was called the Mark of Ages, or we just call it Mark Age. And I learned to meditate, and in that group, I learned how to send light and love to the whole world. And I've had that practice ever since then. I was 18 when I started that. But I didn't stay with the group. I ended up having babies and careers and all that. And so my spiritual path just kind of came to a slow halt, I guess you could say, even though I still had a lot of ideas. And back then it was the 60s, so there was a lot of rebellion against traditional institutions, and so it was a confusing time for me. I was a Republican, I was a Christian, I was a light worker, I was a beach bum. There was all these different identities that I had. So after I settled down again, I started taking some training, and I went to the S training. And if you're familiar with the S training, it was quite revolutionary back in the 70s. A lot of controversy about it, but it was transformational. It really did cause me to think about who I am and how am I going to spend my time on this planet. And then I went into other kinds of training. Eventually, I went through 5 levels of meditation training in the Shambhala tradition, and I started attending Quaker meetings for a couple years. So I had these other influences, you could say, in my path, my spiritual development. And then we'll move forward a little bit. I got stage 3 cancer, and at that time, I didn't really have an everyday meditation practice, but I had fairly good eating habits. But I decided I had to do something to make it through the chemo process because that was pretty challenging. It was colon cancer. And so I started taking restorative yoga classes. And that really helped me be grounded, helped me relax during tough times. And I basically sailed through the chemo. I didn't miss work. I kept up with my family. Oh, my white blood cell count was strong all the way through. I didn't have to take any shots for that. So it was a real eye-opener for me as to the power of peace, calmness, meditation, yoga. So I became a yoga teacher, and I have a little yoga studio. As a matter of fact, we're filming in my studio right now. And I teach about 5 classes a week, and just really love it. So that's kind of been my winding spiritual path. Now let's talk a little bit about my career. The first job I had was in high school. I worked for an insurance agency and became skilled. And so when I got out on my own, moved to the beach, I was able to get a job real quickly in an insurance office, and I excelled very well. I actually got my property and casualty license, my 220. And I was also interested in real estate at the time, so I got my real estate salesman's license, then my broker's license, and I focused predominantly on commercial office leasing. Now, I will tell you, I went belly up in that business. I was swimming with the sharks, and I got eaten alive a couple times. A few deaths in that arena. But I learned a lot, and what I learned mostly is that real estate wasn't quite the people business that I was thinking about. So I started looking around, and I discovered coaching that was just coming on the scene back then. And I hired a coach, and she helped me realize that the reason I wasn't doing what I should be doing in the Amway business that my husband at the time wanted to get rich in is because I just didn't want to do that. And I didn't have the strength to tell my husband I didn't want to do it. I didn't even have clarity. I just knew I wasn't taking the right steps for success. And when she helped me sort that out, I thought, whoa, this is a powerful process. And so I went to coach training, became a coach, and I also learned about facilitation right about then, because my clients were saying, hey, can you facilitate this leadership retreat for me? And I'm like, sure, I'll learn how to do that. And so I was always flying by the seat of my pants. It's probably a survival skill that I learned from my early childhood. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and take formal training in facilitation. And I took a course called the Technology of Participation, Group Facilitation Skills. It was great. It was also transformative. I walked out of that course thinking to myself, I'm going to devote the rest of my life to this. Because it's also very spiritual. It's about helping a group come together and think together and plan together and work together. And so these connections were really important for me to not only observe, but help to facilitate the formation of them. So I ended up becoming a mentor, top trainer with the Institute of Cultural Affairs. And then I found out about the Heart and Soul program. And that's a community development program with the Orton Family Foundation. Well, I was a really good fit for that because of my coaching and facilitating skills. So I came on board. And now I'm working with a small town here in Montana on their community development plan. So it's very exciting. That's also a very spiritual endeavor for me, to help a community come together about its values, what it wants to see in its own future, and bringing disparate people together, hearing from the voices that are muffled in society, the ones we never really hear from. And this program's all about inviting the whole community. So it's very spiritual for me, and my two paths are merging between the yoga, meditation, community development, training. So what brought me to the point of doing these videos? September 2017, 2 years ago, I watched a video called What the Health. Now, I was into healthy food and I just thought I'd watch this video. Well, I really wanted to turn it off several times while it was going on, but I felt compelled to watch it. I knew there was a message in there that I had to hear. And there was a lot of information. I highly recommend it. It's not only about health and food choices. It was really talking a lot about some of the downside to animal protein, but it gave a lot of facts about what's going on in the world in the areas of health, diabetes, overweight, people on lifelong pharmaceutical drugs and all kinds of things. It was an eye-opener for me. And that's when I would say I had my strongest wake-up call. I felt like, oh my gosh, I have to do something. It was a call to action. Now, I'm not one to join groups too much. I like the group dynamic, but mostly from the facilitator perspective. And I really didn't feel like I fit into society anywhere, even though I always wanted to. But this video brought forth a calling inside of me, and that is, I need to speak out. And I'm like, oh, geez, I never wanted to be in the limelight because I was always, I don't know, I guess you could say I was marginalized most of my life. And I didn't have the confidence, but I felt compelled. And so here I am. Thank you for listening.